is Wake Up Sierra Leone, coming to you live from our studios on Wesley Street. Now, today we will be discussing the conversation surrounding the alliance between Sierra Leone People's Party and the National Grand Coalition. And for that, the guest here with us this morning is Lawrence Williams, who's a media and political analyst, and also Jasmin, Suma, who's the national chairman and leader, the National Grand Coalition. Good morning, gentlemen. It's a pleasure having you.
Yeah, good morning.
Yes, let me start off with you, Lawrence Williams. You know, the political space in Sierra Leone has seen many changes, and this coalition between the SLPP and the APC, you know, should have marked a growth in what we believe and values and principles in democracy and growth in general. Have you seen that into this alliance? Did it take the effect we wanted as a nation, as a country?
Well, in the first place, I think we should try to understand the factors that gave rise to the formation of the alliance in the first place. Now, it is not new since the return of multi-party elections in 1996 for political parties to form alliances, either opposition coming together from an alliance or ruling party having its own alliance with some opposition forces. But some of the underlying factors which normally give rise to formation of political alliances, especially in this part of the world, vary. For instance, campaign financing, for example, when parties do not have the financial muscle, you know, to be able to pool resources to compete independently, they tend to come together so that they can now pool resources together and be able to compete as a coalition. Secondly, when there is, well, not a level playing field, when parties tend to be skeptical about the abuse of incumbency and whether, in fact, there are uncertainties around the incumbency's reaction to losing power should there be a defeat in the elections, then parties could form an alliance as well. There are several other factors. Let me just cross-check my notes because I made a lot of citations here, references here. Again, the government as well, the abuse of incumbency. There are times when the incumbents could, I mean, as part of the dirty politics, prevent opposition from uniting. And in such instances, the degree to which certain actors, key actors in the political scene, are certainly certain that the incumbent will cede power, then it becomes a cause for political formation. Again, predictability as well. If you take our own election, the last elections, for example, there were several electoral pools conducted, most of which predicted earlier that the incumbent was going to win the elections. So the predicted probability of an incumbent victory could now tend to draw support from or formation of alliances from those in opposition. Basically, the context in which the NGC SLPP alliance was formed hasn't been much clearer to the public. Because I remember at some point, the then leader, I don't know whether he's still the leader and chairman of the NGC, because at some point we also heard that he has returned to the SLPP, was saying that it would bridge the ethno-regional fractionalization within the body politics of Sierra Leone. So it was saying that it will bring about national cohesion. Those were some of the reasons advanced for the formation of the coalition. However, in my view, and going by a lot of political literature on formation of electoral alliances or coalitions, if you like, they are basically, or at the heart of the formation is about political rewards or payoffs, if you like. So, in an instance where some faction of the NGC now feel dissatisfied about the outcome of the marriage between them and the SLPP, and they want an out, they want out of the alliance or the arrangement or the agreement, as the case may be, while you have another faction, probably those who are sort of getting the rewards or the payoffs of the formation of the alliance, now said they should stick to the alliance. Then it becomes a very cumbersome problem, very complex problem to actually analyze, granted that within the context of your question, as to whether it has contributed or yielded the desired results. It becomes very complex for me to say whether or not it has actually yielded the desired results.
Power struggle is quite an interesting it's quite an interesting thing when it comes to politics. In Sierra Leone, we know the two big players in the political space, the APC and the SLPP. We've seen the role these other political parties play. They hate to be called smaller political parties. These other political parties play in decision-making when it comes to elections, especially in an election that has so much tension that a runoff is predicted. But in the case of NGC, what we saw before the June 2023 elections was sort of like a flip-flop. They were part of COP. COP was an alliance with the main opposition because APC was part of that COP. Not too long after that, it's an alliance with the ruling government, the SLPP party. And here we are.
Well, one could argue that the consortium of political parties was not too formal as was the arrangement with the SLPP and the NGC. In fact, I remember at some point when Yumkela was pushing for a grand coalition of alliance, his idea was for all opposition parties to unite under a common goal, to pursue a common objective. And however, from what I gathered at that time, there was disagreement as to who should lead such grand coalition of progressives. Yeah, that was the exact name he called it, Grand Coalition of Progressives. And so the COP was basically a consortium, not necessarily an alliance or a coalition in the political sense of the word. Mind you,
but an agreement
are supposed to be registered.
But an agreement with other opposition parties against the ruling party.
No, what the COP was doing at that time was to amplify their voices on issues pertaining or issues that affect opposition parties at the time. So, for example, when we talked about the registration process, when we talked about the 2021 midterm, the conduct of the census, for example, and so many other issues that were occurring at the time. So instead of having opposition parties independently address these issues, they rather chose to come or form that consortium through which they can now channel their voices in unison and be able to amplify their concerns and agitations as the case may be. So the COP was not that too formal in stricto sensu of the word.
Okay, let's bring in Jasmin into the conversation. First of all, let's start off with the status of the NGC party. What should the public know about the party as of now?
The NGC party is alive, active, kicking as ever. We have, of course, a few hiccups here and there with respect to the fact that some of our members, most of our members, are unhappy with our alliance with the SLPP, which led to a few of them resigning prior to the elections, and many of them sitting back and not being active in party affairs after the elections. And now a lot more are angry and want us out of the alliance. So that's the state of the situation right now.
Okay, even though you made mention a lot of them are angry, what are some of, the factors you were looking forward to? There was this manifesto, you had 13 or so principles or, in alliance that you expected. But where are you seeing all of this? Is it even tangible? Are you expecting better as, the SLPP party goes further into governance?
In any agreement, in any legal document, judges interpret the document based on two things. First, the letter, the letter of the document itself, the way it's written. They look at that, analyze it, and they begin to make judgment on the basis of what is written. The second one is the intent, the intent of the framers of that particular document. In this case, based on what was written in the framework of the agreement, as was called, Article 12 states that if the alliance wins, the SLPP party and the NGC will form a government in which NGC will be assigned or allocated certain positions, ministerial, spelt it out, deputy ministerial, heads of parastatals, ambassadorial positions, etc., etc. As the case with every appointment, subject to the discretion of the president. Now, every indication prior to, during, and after the signing of the agreement, the intent was clear that immediately after we win, in the formation of the government, NGC will be part of it. So, up till from that time to now, most of our members are disappointed to the fact that that part of the agreement has not been fulfilled. We had Dr. Kade Koleim Kela, who was assigned to be chairman of some kind of, I don't know how to...
Presidential task force.
Renewable energy task, some task force of the president. We all know what it is. But the ministries under which we expect those task force to operate are ministries controlled by the chief minister. But nevertheless, some of us were comfortable that at least the head of our party is playing some role somewhere. But all of a sudden he exited our party and became a member of the opposition party, the ruling government, which obviously means he's no longer representing the NGC party. So that solace that we had was taken away from us.
How many NGC members currently have an appointment under the President Bio-led administration?
That's hard to tell, because it has to start with you defining who the real NGC member is.
But as a party, you should have your database of your membership. That's
what I'm saying. We have Mimi Stevens, IJ Kaba, and those are the only two that I can recall. One is given as an advisor in State House for what is it? Children Affairs or Women Affairs? And the other is the Deputy Minister in Environmental Affairs.
Before the 2018 elections, when NGC, as a baby, was taking ground, the campaign message was mainly against what your party referred to as Alasan and Alusain, being the APC and the SLPP.
Which is still the case.
But along the line, we've seen an alliance of the same NGC who criticized Alasan and Alusain, form a relationship with both Alasan and Alusain at convenience. How do you then explain the flip-flop to especially the supporters you gathered who were against the APC-led administration and against the SLPP-led administration, who supported you just because you were against Alasan and Alusain? How do you explain the flip-flop?
It's not a flip-flop. In politics, you have a common interest. It's the interest that defines how you react at any given point. You guys mentioned about COP. COP was formed on account of the fact that the opposition was weak when individual parties take positions on some of the constitutional breaches that were going on, especially at the early stage of the bill administration. So the common interest in that case is for us to come together and create a common opposition that will have a much better impact than just relying on individual political parties to take a position. That was the common interest. It is not because we believed in the values of APC, which is more or less communism or socialism that has no bearing to supporting the people, or that APC has changed overnight. COP achieved its goal. It was not an alliance. It was just a consortium of progressive political parties, as they call it, but I don't see how APC can be progressive. But in any case, that's how they called it. We called it. And the common objective was to create a stronger opposition due to the fact that APA was already hijacked by the ruling party, and they dictate what happens in APA. And we cannot call ourselves opposition when we keep supporting the government's bad policies all the time. So that's why we formed COP. That was the common objective that drove us to doing so. With respect to the alliance with the ruling government, the common objective were twofold. One, the tension in the country has reached a height that it became scary for many of us, more especially when the opposition, APC in this case, who had a stronger following, did not, and perhaps still does not, have control of their grassroots. You have forces outside the country that dictate to the grassroots, and everybody sees the grassroots react. If they say go attack, they attack. If they invoke, dictate, ask them to go out in the street and burn houses, they do it. If they say kill, they kill. Not once did we see any leader, any member in the leadership of APC standing up to criticize those unlawful behavior of some of their grassroots. So people like us, me personally, I became scared. I said, what if these guys, at this time, they are emboldened to do things like this? What happens if we give them the reign of power? What do you think would be? Especially they will be going for other tribes. They will be attacking Mendes in Freetown to kick them out. That's obvious. They will be attacking anybody who was against APC because the party does not have control over them. That became scary. That was one reason. The second reason was the prospect that, according to the promises that were made by the president, he wants to form a unity government. Our interpretation, me personally, my interpretation of a unity government is taking the best talent from SLPP, the best talents from NGC, best talents from APC, and bring them together to bear on the development of the nation. I saw it. My perception was that he was going to form a government that's going to establish a good legacy for him, a legacy government. And since our objective is to serve the people...
That does not seem like the practice of politics anywhere. What convinced you that that would have become a reality? To have a government of the best people from the APC, the SLPP, and the NGC form a government?
Well, two reasons. One, sometimes when you analyze things, you put yourself in the position of the person you're analyzing. So I put myself in the position of President Bio. I said, I've been a junta leader before. I've failed the people of this nation. And God gave me another opportunity. I became a president for 5 years. And there is nothing to glorify about your leadership in the last 5 years. So this time around, which is my last time, and very few people are that lucky, I think since I'm not going to be beholden to my party, I'm not forced to appoint mediocres because I'm expecting them to vote for me in the next election, I can now use this opportunity and create a legacy for myself. So that's the thing that was driving my thought process. I may be naive in doing so, but that's the logical way I saw things.
I'm curious to understand the leadership style of the leadership of the NGC to a point where you have members disagreeing with decisions of the party that led to some resignations, and as you put it, some now are not giving their full participation to the party. What's the leadership style of the party? How do you come about making decisions on behalf of the party?
Well, the situation that led to members resigning is unique in the sense that we try to be as democratic as possible, allowing members to have their viewpoint in any decision-making process. And in a situation like that, you expect people to have dissenting opinions. Whereas other political parties like PMDC, the man who calls the shot, he goes, met and by Kuruma, makes a decision, nobody objects, because he calls the shot, nobody objects. The same applies with PDP. Temu Bangura goes and discusses with Tijankaba, and nobody objects, because the internal structures are not democratic. Nobody has an opinion, so they just follow suit. In our case, we create a system that allows our members to have an opinion. So in a situation like that, it is obvious that some people may have dissenting voices. The only challenge which I believe affects us, or affected us then, was the fact that we had one person who was the iconic leader, whose name kind of symbolizes that of the party, which is Dr. Kande Koloyumkela, and whose force that the party was established, and the chairman and leader of a party who is the constitutional head of the party. So that conflict created divided loyalties. You have people that are unwaveringly loyal to Dr. Kande Koloyumkela, irrespective of which party he belongs to, and you have those who are committed to the party. So that situation never existed in PDP, nor did it exist in PMDC. So that is why our situation is a little shaky in the sense that, one, our process is democratic, allowing people to have their opinion voices, which obviously means we should respect their dissenting voices too.
Lawrence, this alliance, or NGC as a whole, in fact, as a political party all by itself, was, excessively relied upon to create a third force for Sierra Leoneans to expect, better from political parties. And then again, this is where we are now. Some members of the NGC are, back at the SLPP party. What does this set for, the space for a third party to thrive in Sierra Leone? Do we still have hope in that? Because the reason why I asked this, back then in 2018, also the elections, a lot of young people heavily relied on the NGC party. It was this face of a change. Should we still rely upon that?
Yes.
Well, it's important to note
explain
that
why.
NGC is not the first third force.
It's
in
not
the
a
body
third
politic.
force, yeah.
And as he had mentioned in 1996, the PDP, in 2002, in 2007, we have Magai's PMDC. And in 2018, we have, of course, we have the NGC.
2012 UDM.
2012, we had the UDM. Yes, in 2018, we have NGC. But we also had the ADP, even though ADP was not a third force, but it had its own influence on the political scene. Now, normally, when third forces are formed, you will see a lot of young people gravitating towards the third force. It depends on how committed they are to upholding the ideologies for which they were established. For example, the PMDC was formed as a result of disagreement in the 2005 SLPP convention. When Magai formed the PMDC, his promise was to liberate this country from the grip of the two political parties, two grand old political parties who are regarded as the bane of Sierra Leone's problems. But going to the runoff, he joined forces with one of those parties, one of the two grand old parties he had criticized them, the APC. The APC won, of course, they were given some seats, and there was a disagreement with one of the PMDC MPs supporting the positions of APC in parliament, and that led to fragmentation of the NGC, the PMDC rather, to the point that even the UDM was born out of PMDC. Mohamed Bangua was Secretary General at some point of the PMDC. He left there to form the UDM. We now come back to the NGC. It's important to also point out that the NGC is a product of the SLPP. It was as a result of disagreements between the Yum-Keller faction of the SLPP and the Julius Maada faction of the SLPP that gave rise to the formation of the NGC, whereas Yum-Keller was either denied registration or it was refused entry into the SLPP. So when this coalition was now formed in 2023 rather, it defeats the purpose and the ideologies of the establishment of the NGC as a political party on the scene. And one thing I also must highlight here is the fact that when it comes to formation of political or electoral alliances, ideologies are not necessarily a predeterminant in that whole arrangement. But many people felt aggrieved or dissatisfied. NGC having criticized these two political parties, people now relied or rested their hopes for a possible change on the NGC and its leadership. It was this same leadership that now betrayed the people's trust and aligned itself with one of those parties they have heavily criticized. In fact, I remember when they entered parliament in 2018, following the skirmishes regarding the election of speaker and so, his first interview was that he defined or described the whole scenario as a juntocracy methodology. So somebody like that, people were not expecting him to succumb to the trivialities of politics, if you like.
But Dr. Kande Yumkela himself, as an individual, you have him as a person, you have NGC as a political party. Is it fair now to rub his actions as a stain on NGC as a political party?
Good point.
I think Jasmin has explained it in a more simpler way. The leadership drives the followers, inspires the followers. In a situation where there was disagreement between the two icons of the party, Dr. Yumkela and that of Dr. Dennis Bright. These were the forces, in my view, that held the NGC together. So when that dispute struck and there was no way they could mend it, then the old party died the day Dr. Dennis Bright resigned from the NGC.
I take exception to that.
And that is why they are now faced with a situation where they are sort of crying for political payoffs. I can bet that not all, or even not most, or not even many NGC members are acquainted with the content of the agreement signed between NGC and SLPP. So when you talk, in fact, that should in fact be a public document. Remember the day they signed that thing, it was only displayed, you know, held up high, displayed so that we could take photographs and blah, blah, blah. We do not know for sure the entirety of the content. It is only now that
But it emerged on social media.
Yes, I know. Now, at that point when I saw those documents, I reached out to, there was this acting PRO or so, to confirm its authenticity. They refused to authenticate the document. So, as going by journalistic principles, I was not going to go by what I saw on social media. I take that into account. However, the challenge they now face is that they want to enforce something that is not enforceable. And this brings to question the commitment problem of potential leaders of such coalitions or alliances. It is normal, especially in our multi-ethnic political society, for alliances to succeed in giving out the rewards or sharing the power and resources after elections, because going by the dictates of the Constitution, the president is the be-all. He has the full power to decide and determine. And mind you, there are some people that get long bench, they bench it long.
Lawrence, it pleased the leadership of NGC as a party to enter into an alliance with the SLPP.
Amid disagreement. Strong disagreement.
You could add
from
that.
the Dennis Bright faction.
You could add that, but it has not pleased His Excellency the President to honor that alliance by giving them more appointments. What do you think might have gone wrong between the time of signing the alliance and the time the president drops his pen on appointments for his second term? Now, I know the appointments continue, but for now, there has been... exactly, so you
guys
have
have
to
me
say
here.
he has
You're
dropped
talking
his
about
pen
an
on
alliance
the
document,
appointment.
and you have somebody who is a signatory to the
Don't worry,
document.
you'll get your turn. We have a whole lot of time.
Now,
His opinion is valid. That's why he's also here as a guest.
one of the scholars in political literature, Kadima, said that because political parties and coalitions are institutions of public interest, the law should provide for the registration of coalitions and require that their objectives, duration, and agreement are made public. I think some aspects of this were not fulfilled. Again, he said that if politicians, I think I love this one, if politicians have no means of enforcing any power sharing promises, and if in the weakly institutionalized conditions in which politicians vie for office in democratic countries, politicians cannot expect to rely on institutional mechanisms to enforce a pre-electoral agreement. What I'm saying in essence is that the whole hula baloo confronting the NGC now is for His Excellency Julius Maada Bio to fulfill his own commitment to the agreement by appointing a number of NGCians into respectable public offices. And the NGC, in my view, have no means by which to enforce that agreement.
Jasmin, is that so, or is there more to this?
Now let me take you back to the first question.
All the things you wanted to react to.
On third parties.
Yeah.
And I hope every Sierra Leonean is listening.
Not every.
There are three important factors, reasons why third parties fail. One, because they are formed by iconic figures who are part and parcel of the corrupt establishment, who have already been stained, and they take that grievance to establish a third party. The second reason is because third parties are usually regionally based or ethnically based. So they don't have that force to have an influence across the entire country. Thirdly, third parties usually do not have any ideological positions or differences with the two old political parties. And fourthly, the same way the internal structures of APC and SLPP are undemocratic, unaccountable, and not responsive to their members, is the same problem that exists in so many other third parties that existed prior to the NGC party. Now, with respect to the NGC party, we are guilty of number one, grievance from the SLPP. The iconic figure from SLPP came and led to the formation of the NGC party. But with respect to ideological difference, our party is known for being a progressive party that believes in the right of every Sierra Leonean to their life, their livelihood, and to enjoy and be able to develop within Sierra Leone. We will not have a government that take gun and shoot their citizens, denying them that right. As happened in APC, as happened in SLPP party. They've all killed their citizens. NGC government is adamantly against that. Nothing will happen under our government that will force us to kill Sierra Leoneans. That's our core principle. Two, we believe in progressive values that gives rights to our citizens to understand and value and respect not only their economic rights, but also their political rights. So we will focus our economic policies in developing Sierra Leoneans, which is not the case that happens in any of the other political parties. When it comes to the issue about regional balance, NGC is the only political party in this country that has equal following across the nation, the east, south, north, and the west of this country. We may not be a large number, but there is not a constituency in this country where you will not find an NGC member or members that are in good number for us to be able to expand from. There is not a constituency in this country where you don't have NGC members. So we are a melting pot of all the different tribes, from the Cruz to the Locos, to the Limbas, the Temines, the Mendes, the Sosos, the Fulas, the Madingos. They're all part and parcel of the NGC party at almost equal numbers. Whereas APC and SLPP, they may have all the different tribes, but those parties are dominated by two major tribes. One, SLPP party is dominated by the Mendes.
Okay, so let's leave the tribal sides
no, but that's the difference. That's the difference. That's why they failed. We are trying to project a unified nation, a country that is the melting pot, embracing every tribe so that we can move this nation forward. Those are some of the core problems.
The first question I asked Laurent was the fact that a lot of young people relied on the NGC party. You haven't spoken to that.
Yeah, many people, young people especially, relied on the NGC, and some of them still rely on the NGC. The problem is, it is easy to say, I follow this political party. But many a time, nobody sits back to think, how is that political party financed? Unfortunately, there are very few of us, most of whom are in the diaspora, a good number out here also, who do the legwork from door to door, all over the country, spend money out of their own money, take time out of their jobs to move this party forward. And then you have support from our members in the diaspora. In the last election, our budget was $6.5 million. And many of the followers will just say, I'll follow, but they don't.
Are there any regrets you have?
In terms of?
And, the alliance and the fact that some of the things you want have not been met, or do you hope for the better? From your heart, speak to that.
Regret is an understatement. That's it. Regret is an understatement.
In your deal, NGC wholeheartedly supported the SLPP.
So another thing that, before you ask that question, another thing I took exception to his comment, he said prior to the election, every poll indication was that the ruling party.
I said most of the polls.
Yes, most of the polls.
Victory for the incumbent party.
That is not true.
I mean,
that is not true.
Can you tell?
Yes. Because there is no way you can. There is no way you can provide.
Pools,
there is no way you can provide a pool right now.
Whether it's even Sarah pool, whether it's IGL pools conducted by IGL and other Sarah I magazine, you name them. A whole lot.
The polls that I know
favored the income. In fact, at some point, I think there was a particular survey which predicted exactly what the ECSL turned out to give as the final outcome of the presidential elections. 56% for Julius Maada Bio, 56% again from the NEC, saying that for the incumbent president. So most of the polls predicted winning or victory for the incumbent. I'm not saying that there was no exception. I'm saying that most of the surveys, the electoral polls conducted prior to the election, predicted.
Can you quote which ones? Because we all
IGR, for example.
IGR.
Yes, they predicted in fact 56% for Julius Maada Bio. CI magazine, Masita Michael, they conducted a poll as well. They predicted a higher probability, a winning probability for the incumbent than the opposition. So that in itself, in my view, could have been a driving force as to why the alliance was formed. NGC thinking that, oh, their chances were limited, or the possibility of NGC winning government was limited. And if you say that NGC is that melting pot, encompassing all tribes, cutting across all regions, constituencies, and what have you, then it suggests that NGC should have the numbers to win presidential elections. But in this case, NGC could not even return one single parliamentary seat. That tells you NGC is no longer that melting pot. And in fact, the idea of NGC being a third force no longer exists.
Yeah.
Now,
Jasmin,
can you give me a chance? Because immediately I open my mouth, he interjects, and I don't like to go back and
Please
forth.
go on.
So I hold back. Let me go back to his previous erroneous analysis that all polls were indicating that the incumbent was going to win.
I said most, not all.
Most polls were indicating that the incumbent was going to win. The polls that I saw predicted the runoff. That is not winning. A runoff means you got to go back to the second battle. It was the NGC factor that put the SLPP across that runoff margin. Let's take back to the 2018 elections. We had 6.9%, almost 7% of the vote. BO won for less than 3% of the vote, which means if that 6.9% had aligned with that party, then there will never have been need for a runoff. Similarly, in 2023, we had over 10,800 executives in every ward, 440-something wards. We had 18 member executives actively participating in the politics of our party. 16 districts, 18 executives in each one of them. 5 or 6 regions, 18 executives in each one of them, some of 20 executives. So actively participating on a regular basis. That formed the basis of over 10,800 participating across the nation to run or whatever. But the naivety that he displayed is the fact that is this by him saying that NGC had support all over. If they claim that they have support all over the country, across every tribe and every region, that means they should have been able to win a presidential election. That naivety means he does not understand the fact that I don't care how many support you have. If you don't have the logistics and the means to capture the support, there is no way you're going to win. And the fact also remains,
so how
fighting
do you have
APC
the support?
and
How do you have the support and not capture the support?
because capturing the support means having $6.5 million to get over 11 to 15,000 polling agents across the nation that you pay, you feed, you transport, and then you have to have machinery to be able to campaign just like these other two political parties do, and a whole lot of different stuff.
Is it the money
involved.
that prevented the NGC from winning presidency in 2018? And is it the money that prevented the NGC from winning more seats in the 2023 elections?
The issue with the 2018 election, money was a factor, but not much, because we had enough money. We had enough money to be able to create the right trajectory. What we didn't have then was time to plan, because a few months to the election, that's when the party's registration was approved, and that was when, of course, APC was putting all sorts of blocks in everything that we were doing. So we didn't have a means to actually vet those who were going to be manning our polling stations. We were sending money to party representatives in districts, and they were taking those money. I can remember one in Kenema actually took millions of Leones NGC gave to them and went to the SLPP, say, look, I don't give money, look, campaign against them. So that's the kind of mentality of the people that we have in this country. They use politics. In fact, there are two categories or three categories of voters. You have 20% that are apologetically committed to the SLPP party. I don't care whether they bring Jesus Christ, they will always vote for it.
I still don't get it, Jasmin. Please clarify again. Yeah. Is it the lack of that $6.5 million that prevented the NGC from winning the elections?
In 2023 or
both
2018?
Elections.
Well, the first election, I told you, money was not much of a factor. We had enough money to be able to, but we made poor judgments in the spending of those money, and we didn't have time to actually plan. And of course, the two giants connived against us. So in 2023? 2023, we didn't have the money. Our budget was about $6.5 million, and we had less than $500,000. So there was no way we would be able to get over 11 to 12 or 15,000 polling agents across the entire country. Each one paid an average of $25 to $50.
So your victory has nothing to do with the threshold set for the PR system?
Our loss. The PR system was the second bigger factor. The PR system was exclusively set to eliminate the other political parties. And some of us saw that. We made statements against it, we predicted against it, but unfortunately the leader of our party was in line with it.
I just wanted to get that clear because you attributed the $6.5 million to the lack of the $6.5 million to...
As one of the factors, not necessarily the only factor. As one of the factors. The PR system was another factor. Because most PR system around the world, like the one that exists in Israel, in Italy, the threshold is less than 5%.
Okay. Before we get our eyes off the ball,
and here we're talking about 12 and more percent.
Jasmin, before we get our eyes off the ball, I had asked Lawrence what had happened that it pleased NGC to support the SLPP in signing the alliance, but then it has not pleased His Excellency yet to give you probably the desired amount of appointments. What has gone wrong in the relationship between NGC and the SLPP from the point of signing the alliance to this point where we're at now, where President has made a whole lot of appointments, but very few for the NGC?
Well, when you sign an agreement, there are several factors involved. There was an agreement between President Tijan Kaba and PDP, Timu Bangura. It was a gentleman's agreement. Nobody had about any written document. Because Tijan Kaba was a gentleman who respected his integrity, he honored that. There was a gentleman's agreement between Charles Magai of PMDC and Anes Bai Kroma of APC. One may say anything about Anes Kroma. You may disagree with the way he ran the country, but that particular area, he deserved the respect that he honored that gentleman's agreement between him and Charles Magai. So when agreements are made, the integrity of each signatory to that particular agreement is on the line. There are some who value that integrity.
All right. You also
and there are others.
I beg that you give me time. When he's done.
Okay, you
there are others. Yeah. There are others who do not value integrity. So that is what prevails in our own situation.
You also take exception to the fact that he made mention that when Dr. Dennis Bright left the party died. But then I want you to speak to two issues. When there are political parties, there are ideologies and also, the face of the party. How do you intend to regain from this fall, if I should put it?
Good question. The change of style of leadership is one. The second one is the fact that we did not spend much time in projecting our party ideology because everything was hinged on Dr. Kande Koloyum Kela. He was the iconic head of our party. He represented everything the party represents. So as a result, the aura, the glory that he had within the party, now gone to the SLPP party, left us naked, for lack of a better word. So not that they exist, the ideologies do not exist. They do exist. But we fail in making the people know what we stand for. And this time around, we're going to be focusing on building the party by making sure we project the ideology of the party. So the party will be the iconic entity that everybody will follow, as opposed to any iconic figure that may come and join our party.
Quickly before Lawrence comes in, do you have anyone in mind, you know, as I made mention, the individual, the personality, do you have anyone in mind coming to the 2028 elections, if I should put it that way?
2028?
Yes, to go ahead for the NGC leadership or the party or the aspirant. Do you have anyone in mind?
We already have people expressing interest to want to run for the flag bearership of the party, like one former Honorable Mario, Foday Mario Camara. He is a very prominent figure within the party, and there are others who are not even yet part of our party who have called and expressed interest that they want to consider. Because the one thing I want people to understand is that we want to make NGC the most decent political party you can ever think of in this country, in the sense that, because what happens in APC and SLPP, they have these traditional figures whose sons and grandsons are now controlling the party, and they use thugs to force other people out that wants to penetrate the leadership of the party. And decent Sierra Leoneans who really mean well for this country will not want to be part of our politics of violence, attacks, insult, mamikos, and demeaning relationship between party members. We're seeing some flavor of that within the NGC party, because we have to rely on vagabonds, some of whom are vagabonds from different political parties that are part of our party. So what we are trying to do is to clean up and make sure we have a system that everybody follows. If you want to behave like APC and SLPP, then obviously we'll have to discipline you so that we can create room for decent Sierra Leoneans to come and participate in our politics and move the nation forward.
If in any case those who've left the NGC party wants to come back, we've seen that for the APC, do you have an opening arm to receive them?
We've already made that decision in our previous NEC meeting before this chaotic one. The previous NEC meeting, we held a NEC meeting and took a decision that we open the doors to all our members that left the party, and I even extended an apology to some of them because of they left because of principle. And now, as we can see, they have put us to shame, because what they predicted is what is happening now. So I extended an apology to them and asked that they come back. The only caveat NEC member said, if you were an executive member, you've lost our trust to hold that executive position, except you wait for the next delegate conference. If you want to run for women's leader or whatever position you were occupying before, then you can run. But if you come back, you're not going to occupy your your executive position until such, which I really didn't, wanted to find a different way of putting it. But as I say,
there was definitely a communication channel between the NGC and the SLPP, where you first verbally agreed on the alliance up until the point where you put it on paper and then you signed it. Utilizing that same channel, what's the feedback you're getting from President Bio or the SLPP in terms of reasons why you've not been given the required appointments under President Bio's administration?
That channel has been exhausted in several ways. And the only answer we get, I know you get from the president, you know, give you appointment it. The president say we'll give you appointment, we go meet with we. The chief minister not give you appointment it. And you see the problem with our people in this country, which is what is part of the problem that affects all of us, is the fact that people don't know how to stand up for their own right. Everybody wants to resort to begging and whatever, even for your own right, something that is yours. You still have to go and resort to begging. And there are some of us, we see that completely strange. I don't beg for something that is mine. But in any case, we also exhausted Article 13 of the agreement that was signed at Bintumani, which asks for arbitration. And to do an arbitration, you have to start with a dialogue with the parties to the agreement. Say we want to get arbitration.
So what are your further
we sought
action points?
We sought we sought to have an audience. We wrote a letter to the SLPP chairman explaining our position and our level of grievances that we have and expect feedback from them. We didn't get the feedback. I did have a meeting with the chairman. We had discussion. He says, you know, he will get back to us. And then our Secretary General contacted the Chief Minister to have an audience with the President or even with the Chief Minister. The appointment was made. On the day of the appointment, the Chief Minister didn't show up. So that was aborted. So I want people to know that we're not just taking this step to exit just because we want to exist. We exhausted every aspect of the agreement, including Article 13.
What does exiting the alliance mean for the NGC in terms of action points?
Well, the exiting the alliance will have to require NEC members to make that decision. The national officers cannot do that. They don't have the power to do that. NEC will have to make that decision subject to ratification at our National Delegates Conference, which is what the resolution was about. It's about public perception. There's nothing more to it. It's about public perception. Because public thinks that the bad policies that are happening now is rubbing off on the NGC party. And for people like you guys that know, we're not on the table making decisions. So, but the grassroots down there does not know that. When you talk to them, but left me on all the this government. So it's all about public perception.
What are your line of actions as a political party going forward now that the situation is as it is?
We're going to continue to project the ideologies of our party and run it as a party in opposition.
All right, Lawrence, let me bring you into the conversation. I know you have a lot of things to address, and I want you to come from the standpoint of trust and accountability, because you know there's some form of accountability aspect from the side of the SLPP as well. You know, in terms of taking into consideration the criteria that were put forward in the alliance. Is there any lack of trust here?
Before I answer that question, I would like to respond to some utterly foolish and unreasonable comments made in retort to some of my submissions or arguments here this morning. Firstly, when I said that most of the electoral polls conducted predicted higher stakes for the incumbents than opposition parties, no, I am right, and I cited IGR, I cited Sarah Poole. I mean, his retort, in his counter-argument, he could not cite or reference anyone that suggested a possible runoff. He could not do that. Secondly, when I hold the view that the NGC died following the disagreement or dispute between the Yumkela faction and that of the Dennis Bright faction that led to the resignation of Dennis Bright, and now, of course, now we've seen Yumkela rejoining, if you like, the SLPP. It's my opinion, and I so hold, because it is even evident in the outcome of the 2023 elections. The party we knew as a third force could not return a single member of parliament. Besides that, even their share of the total votes couldn't place them in third position again. I think this this one we call Fulaman Party or so, yeah, came third in the presidential elections, even though they themselves could not return a member of parliament, but they performed better than the NGC in the presidential elections. Again, he said that the NGC is a melting pot, having all tribes, all regions, all constituencies represented. It is my view, and I so hold, that if you have membership in every constituency, it suggests that you have the numbers to win elections. And failing which, you could not even win a presidential election, not even return a member of parliament, even in your own backyard in Cambia district. It simply means that theory does not hold. It does not hold.
That exposes.
I'm coming.
Can you?
I'm coming.
I need to go.
So I've been very much civil, polite, and decent in my communication and conversations here this morning. I will take great exception to any form of insult from Jasmin. I mean, I will not sit here and
I'm not insulting you.
Bring down your anger, frustration.
I'm not insulting you.
Yes, you did. When you said I made erroneous statement or comment, what does erroneous mean? It suggests that it's something
an error.
No. Go and look for the word. I will not. I'd wanted to just explain.
Gentlemen, to add everything to the mix, we're going to factor into the conversation messages from our Facebook viewers.
But before you do,
would let you respond to the question that Zulai
about
had.
NGC's failures.
Yes. So
I need to address that.
Yes, you will, Lawrence.
Yes, respond to the question that Zulai had asked.
Trust and accountability.
Yes.
And accountability. Now, the NGC was seen as that beacon of hope that could bring about change in the way we do things within the body politic of Sierra Leone. If the NGC, as was the case, now sided with the SLPP, that in itself is not just about the ruling party not fulfilling its own commitment to the bargain. The NGC betrayed the independents who had relied and depended on them for future direction. So that betrayal of the trust of the electorate shows that, or is a demonstration that the NGC itself has no moral rectitude to criticize the SLPP or any other political party about trust and accountability. They don't have that moral rectitude.
Okay, thank you. In 1 minute.
He has taken a lot of punch at the NGC party, so I need more than 1 minute to address that. One, it's also another demonstration of political naivety about the geopolitics of this country. To say NGC could not come up with any result in the presidential election to show that they're a third party when NGC did not have a presidential candidate. Secondly, NGC does not have following all over the country, but does not have, we're not able to win elections. Did he forget that we're on a PR system that is talking about 9–10% threshold per candidate? Over and above that.
Other parties contested the same thing and won seats.
Lawrence, please give him his sign.
Which parties?
The APC contested and won parliamentary seats.
I talk about APC. We're talking about forces that are trying to dislocate APC and SLPP. Then we say which example is APC. You see, that's another example of
No, you said you
naivety.
have the numbers.
We have the numbers.
You said
You have the numbers.
More in
Executive alone. Alone.
And now, even if you have 20,000 executive, it is not enough to win the constituency elections.
What?
Do you know that? I know we had a PR system, but even if you had 20,000, it could not be enough. Oh, come on, how much is 20,000? How much is 10,000?
My friend, I was talking about executives.
That
I'm not
is
talking
exactly,
about following.
That
That somebody who understands the geopolitics of this nation will know that any party that has over 10,000, 11,000 executives has a multiplier effect. Each of those executives are following that goes with them. We don't need to go into all of that. But the point I'm trying to make, you know, when you guys have political analysts on your show, make sure you bring people that really have an in-depth knowledge of the geopolitics of the nation, because some of them are bought and sold by the same APC and SLPP. So they come here and dash at the oppositions, the crawling political parties that is here to dislocate APC and SLPP. So they come and bash at us and make us look bad in the eyes of the politics. But fortunately, in this case, I'm here to prove that he's very naive in the geopolitics of this nation. Most of the point that he's making proves my point, that he's just there to bash the NGC, but has no in-depth knowledge about how the geopolitics of the country runs. You're talking about NGC not having presidential numbers. He knows NGC did not have a presidential candidate. You're talking about NGC not able to win elections.
Not returning a parliamentary.
Forgetting the fact that this is the very first time in the history of this country where parties are going to explain to voters to vote for two political parties. Have you ever seen that happen in Sierra Leone? The parties, the voters had no clue how to vote for two political parties. And we were laying emphasis on the presidency because we wanted the presidency to win, at the same time telling our people that if you vote for VO, also vote for NGC. They didn't have no clue. So when they went into the polling day, we made that mistake.
So it was a decision that the NGC made?
Yes. It's our mistake.
Just to highlight that it's a decision made by the NGC.
Yes.
The NGC's that cost them.
So, gentlemen, you would have
let me tell you one thing about me.
You would have more to react to Jasmin and Lawrence when we factor in our Facebook comments.
Everybody knows that I did not join politics to lie to people. Because I have my integrity to put on the line. When
genuine pressure
to win elections,
not to liberate the people from the suffering they are going through in this country. Not NGC.
It's never happened.
So both of you, Jasmin and Lawrence, gentlemen.
But that doesn't mean that you cannot have genuine people that are honest and sincere.
Gentlemen.
Like us. Are you saying that we don't have a play?
Lawrence and Jasmin. Gentlemen, let's have order now in the studio. Thank you. Lawrence and Jasmin, thank you. Let's have order now in the studio. We need to factor in the comments of our Facebook viewers into the conversation. Victor Akomengot says, was the alliance all about appointments or a shared vision or ideology for the development of the country and improvements of the lives of the people?
Good question.
Ronald here is saying those who have resigned from the NGC party, like Dr. Dennis Bryce, Ms. Sarata Stila, and many others who are integral and progressive individuals, should be brought back, which will take a lot of convincing. However, it is not late because Sierra Leone needs a strong third force party, and the NGC was due by the brickmanship of the president, put an end to the NGC making headway in Sierra Leone politics, but unfortunately.
Kamara Charles says, Suma has decently insulted the SLPP leadership, and Mohammed Jallo responds to that comment and says, Suma is saying the truth. If they have agreed to give them some ministers or ministry positions.
Mosdi says, what is the NGC doing in all seriousness to bring back the sober-minded people like the Dennis Bright and others to come and help resurrect the party? As it stands today, most of us, not including yourself, Jasmin, your character have never been seriously questioned by any naive engagement in supporting the vague alliance with Al-Hussein and Al-Hassan or SLPP.
Mohammed El Jallo says, according to Article 12 of the said agreement, it is stated that if the alliance wins, that the NGC will get ministerial and deputy ministerial positions and also head of parastatals. Now, according to Mr. Suma, the NGC currently has 2 appointees in this government, one as a deputy minister and the other as being the head of a parastatal.
No.
Now, my question is this appointment not in fulfillment of Article 12? Because there was no specific number in the amount of appointments that the NGC should get.
The final one from me will be from Kamara Charles. Will the NGC party go to court if the SLPP fails to fulfill the agreement?
Mandoa Manchester says the formation of NGC is like changing the driver and keep the same car parts that have been failing the driver. Your response, gentlemen?
One, the part of the reason for going to an alliance, which was the first question, whether it was based on ideology or based on appointment, is that our principle as a party, President Bio promised to align his values with our values. That's why it took over a year in the negotiation process, because we wanted to make sure that he understands that we are looking for a government that serves the people, looking for a government that delivers for the people, looking for a government that makes sure the prices of rice go down and not continue to increase, that the prices of fuel go down and not continue to increase. Hold on to the economy so that the people of this nation will rise economically, provide healthcare services, provide road, provide proper education system, and whole lot. All of those were discussed in terms of making sure that this government that we thought was going to be formed in that light was going to be about the people, and for the people of this nation. That was the principle. That was the driving force. Those are the promises that led us into having the alliance, going into the alliance. Now, in terms of
will the NGC go to court?
Whether the NGC will go to court, that's not my decision to make. My personal position, I had made that in the past. If it was left with me alone, making that decision, like now, we've already been in court since 1 week after the elections. But I'm not the one that makes the decision for the party. I only execute what the party National Executive Committee decides.
Another person was asking that the alliance does not specify a certain amount of appointments. So an appointment is an appointment.
Well, if you are talking about forming a joint government, then obviously he cannot take an advisor to the president on women's affairs as forming a joint government. You cannot take a deputy minister of environmental as forming a joint government. So if we can be as technical as we want to be.
It counts for three, though, because upon the time of Dr. Kande Yumkela's appointment, he was still a member of the NGC.
Yes, but he's no longer a member of the NGC.
Yeah, but at the time of his appointment, he was a member of the NGC.
I know
so that counts for an appointment for the NGC.
But he does not represent the NGC
anymore. But back then he was representing.
Well, if that's why we put the matter into the hands of our members to decide.
But why hasn't the NGC taken satisfaction in these appointments when the point that this viewer raised is the alliance itself did not specify the quantity of appointments? You just signed an agreement to say appointments, which means that even one counts as an appointment.
As I said,
so how do you now come back to fault the SLPP for something you signed in black and white that did not specify an amount?
You see, there is more behind the scene than meets the eye. There is a framework of the agreement, which is a representation of the details of the agreement. I'm not at liberty to go into all of that right now. What you see was considered the framework of the agreement. Now, whether people take satisfaction in one or two appointments and consider that to be NGC being in a coalition government or not is one the National Executive Committee will decide, subject to ratification by the National Delegates Conference. And when that comes, you guys will hear about us.
All right. Thank you so much for taking your time to talk to us. Lawrence, do you have anything to say in seconds, please?
Well, what I would say is that Sahelians, particularly the youth, should exercise a bit of patience. A true and genuine, sincere thought force is on its way. Don't believe in the NGC.
All right, thank you very much.
Just before we let him go, there's an important message here for you, Lawrence. Kamara Charles says, calling a political party a Fulaman party is tribal and is undone. Your panelist needs to reverse his statement and tender an apology. How would you respond to
that? He feels offended. I used inverted commas because I couldn't vividly recall the name of the political party. We used to call it ND, thank you very much. The National Democratic Alliance, right? National Democratic Alliance. So apologies to that person. Apologies.
Okay, thank you very much, Lawrence Williams. He's a media and political analyst, and earlier we had Jasmin Suma from the national, who's the national chairman from the National Grand Coalition Party. We're going for a short break, and we'll be right back.
Wokel Commercial Bank, one for telling customers then say, they don't come with one new banking service where they call agency banking. With this agency banking service here, so you can use any mobile phone for do any transaction. You can open account to any
excitement in sports.
We get our inspiration from you because you have chosen us as the nation's most trusted voice. AYV, the home of all things credible, factual, and of course, all times balanced news.
I'm back in the second segment of Wake Up Sierra Leone. We will be discussing the importance of Ramadan as Muslims across the globe commences fasting today. And for that, in the studio, I have with me Alhaji Sheikh Imam Zakaria M. Dumbuya, who's a Media and Communication Director at UCLSL. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, my sister.
Yes, first of all, give us a background. Fasting, of course, is one of the pillars of Islam, and, you know, its significance and, you know, the way Muslims should observe it.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, as rightly said by my sister. I'm shortly called Imam Zakaria M. Dumbuya from the Directorate Office of the United Council of Imams in Sierra Leone. Of course, the holy month of Ramadan's fast formed one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Fulfilling it makes you a complete Muslim, and it's a compulsory, it's a wajib. It's a mandatory for a Muslim. So one of the importance of Ramadan, it's a requirement for the entering of a Muslim to Jannah. If you neglect it and you have the requirement to do it, we consider that person to be punished by Allah. And that pillar can even prevent a Muslim from entering Jannah. So that's why Ramadan is very, very important for a Muslim, because there are an hadith, that was said by the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that Buni al-Islamu ala khamsin, meaning the foundation of Islam, it's built up in 5 pillars. And one of those pillars, it's Ramadan. And the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam strongly emphasized the importance of the 5 pillars. Each one that is neglected by a Muslim, wallahi, that can serve as a hindrance for you to enter Jannah, and fulfilling it can also open the doors of your goodness in this world, the doors of mercy. Of course, when you die as a Muslim, you enter Jannah. So that's why Ramadan is very, very important spiritually, and even physically, for economically, there are a lot of benefits that we can have from Ramadan, if only we can accept to fast it accordingly, in accordance with the Quran and the teachings, the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Okay, observing Ramadan does not only equate to, abstaining from food. It has other disciplines you have to carry on. Earlier, before the program started, Phoebe and I were discussing that you have to, stop backbiting, talking about unnecessary things, engaging in things that you're not supposed to engage in. But what would you say to those, areas that people tend to go back to since at the end of Ramadan?
That's not the problem, because going back to the odds or to the things that Ramadan warned against in the Quran and the Sunnah, that is just telling you that your fasting has a question mark. It's questionable. Certain ulama, certain Islamic scholars even said that it's a determiner. When you go back where you were before Ramadan, determines, some of the unacceptability of that fast to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But keeping away, abstaining from these particular things that we are warned against before Ramadan, abstaining from them, maintaining, going into those particular things, also determine that Allah has accepted your fast. So Ramadan is not about hunger only. In fact, the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, advised that man lam yadhur al-qawlu zur wal-amal bih. Anyone that does not refrain or abstain himself from saying odd words and also acting oddly, the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam advised that that person must not hesitate to use his food, to eat his food, and also drink water. That the same thing after Ramadan is not all about hunger, but the things that we are taught, the things that are meant for us to uphold in Ramadan. When you fail to uphold them after Ramadan, wallahi, we have so many scholars, ulama, that said your fast is not acceptable. Okay. So that's why as Muslims we have to fight. It's a training, it's a seminar. We are now learning, we are now in the university. After Ramadan, you have to be doing the things that we are practicing in Ramadan, and you have to maintain them until the next Ramadan. As Allah advised us, وَعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينُ. Maintain the rules of your Lord till death.
One of the greatest challenges when it comes to fasting, our everyday life, is on the streets of Freetown, especially if you are a driver.
Yes, ma'am.
We've seen instances where people just cuss out, and then they remember, oh, you just made me cuss when I'm fasting. In such instances, when someone who's fasting finds himself or herself in that position, and then you cuss out, what do you do?
My sister, in Surah Al-Baqarah, one of the biggest chapters in the Quran, there are dua, that Allah asks us to ask him that Rabbana la tu'akhidna in nasina ukhtana. Allah, don't hold me responsible, don't punish me when I mistakenly, say something or forgetfully say something. So for you, the fast woman or fast man, when you do something that you are forced to do, it's not by your will or forgetfully, you did that something, wallahi, hence it's not intentional, Allah will forgive you.
What would you say, to people who are in the workspace, who have to go to work and, observe some form of decency during Ramadan? You have to mingle with people, you have to talk on certain issues. What advice would you give to them?
Well, my advice to them, especially because when you're fasting, your mouth must also be fasting. Your hands, your feet, and even the heart. So you have to be careful on the don'ts and do's of Ramadan. As I've said earlier, that the Holy Prophet Muhammad said that if you can't do away with odd words, careless statements, abusive languages, the Holy Prophet advised us, don't hesitate, because you can't be suffering for nothing with hunger. Just go ahead and take your water, drink it, and eat your food. So that's why we should be mindful of what we say. It's very, very important, because the mouth, the hands, your eyes, even your feet, all of these things must be fasting.
The reason why I asked that, many a time during Ramadan, you get to see a lot of people spit around the environment, and to a very large extent, people are.
Thank you so much, my sister.
And tired with that.
And that's it's makruh. Islam hates it when you are fasting. In fact, to a certain extent, it's look at riyah, show off. You want the environment to take note that you are fasting. No, fasting is not sickness, for God's sake. Manage yourself when you want to do this thing. Find yourself in a corner, and don't do it for people to take note. Because most of the young people, they do it to show off, for people to take note of them. It's a makruh. If someone persists in it, it's bring in a riyah, show off. Your fast can be questionable by Allah. So we must be careful. Let's do it Syrian. Fast is a secret work between you and Allah. So you can't be fasting and try to impress people by doing such things. You should be maintain, comport yourself. Don't even make people to know that you are fasting. Manage it yourself. You can also, we are advised in Islam not to disturb others. Don't disturb people. Don't make them to feel annoyed.
Okay.
Yes.
Phoebe?
With the holy month of Ramadan, we do have a lot of distractions for young people, whether it's social media, for the football lovers, whether it's football. How would you advise young people, particularly, to handle the distractions that come during the holy month of Ramadan?
For me, because as a young man, I must advise that we limit, especially the areas that we know, we understand that when we go there, we will be in conflict with Allah, especially when we are fasting. Young people must be mindful. It's just a month. It's 29 or 30 days. Whatever that is going to be in conflict, that can contradict the blessing and the rules of the fasting, for me, I will advise them to be careful. Before then, I was very much be careful, but for now, I'm more careful than ever, because I don't want my fast to have problem, and I don't want to have problem with Allah when I'm fasting. So I'm advising them to be careful. I'm not going to advise them to lock off the media. No, but let them be careful, because there are also, you learn a lot of things. You know, there are mashaykhs, there are lectures, there are so many good things in social media. But for me, wherever you are thinking that when I'm there, that can become a conflict, I can have problem with my fast or with Allah. For a young person, it's just a short time. It's at 29 or 30 days. Manage yourself well and try to earn the blessing of Allah. Because the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu told us that man soma Ramadanan imanan wa ihtisaban ghufira lahu ma taqaddam min dhanbihi. Whosoever fast sincerely and that person try to endure to have the blessing of Allah, Allah will forgive your previous sins before Ramadan. So let's go for the forgiveness and manage social media judiciously.
Why is the month of Ramadan observed annually by Muslims? What's the history and significance of the month?
Well, I've already started to say something about the significance. Of course, the history of Ramadan, it's not begun by Muslims. Even with Adam, the first prophet, Adam alayhi salam, was also part of the fast, because when you recite the fast, in which Allah asked us in the Quran to fast, He said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, kutiba alaykumus siyam, kama kutiba alal ladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. Oh, you the believers, I prescribe, I recommend for you fasting, as I have done to the past generations with the past prophets. And the reason, the significance for the fasting, Allah says, la'allakum tattaqun, that will increase in your fairness. That will increase in your humbleness. That will increase in your worship. So, my sister, the fasting, the history, it's something that was began by the past prophets. We have 124,000 prophets, 25 prophets are named in the Quran. According to Allah, all of those, fast was recommended for them. So Almighty Allah, and He tells the prophets in the Quran that indeed you are also recommended for you to fast, so that you can increase in your fearness of Allah, you can increase in your humbleness, and also there are a lot of economic benefits you can gain if you fast.
Okay, as we round up, you made mention of economic benefits, and that's exactly what I want us to round up on. There's this notion that whenever there's Ramadan, people get to inflate prices. You go to the market, things exorbitantly and unexpectedly get higher in terms of price. What would you say to, people who sell at the market, who are even Muslims as well, but tend to try to rip people off during this time?
My sister, it's so sad, because Ramadan is a time to increase in your good deeds. And let's just look at what Allah said in the Quran. وَابْتَغِ مَا أَتَاكَ اللَّهُ دَارُ الْآخِرَةِ. Use what Allah has blessed you with. Use what Allah has given you to seek the reward of the hereafter. For us as Muslims, we are expecting the business community for them to make things easy, to soften the market for the general masses during the month of Ramadan, because that's where Allah puts them for the moment, and that's what Allah blessed them with the moment, so that they can earn the blessing of those that's fasting. Because the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whosoever feeds someone that is fasting, or you gift that person, Allah will also bless you without reducing the fast of that fast woman or fast man. So it's just African mentality or business mentality. But really, the holy month of Ramadan is a month of selflessness. It's a month of sacrifice. So we are expecting the business community, dominated, my personal opinion, dominated by the Muslims. We are expecting them to soften, the trade activities for their fellow Muslims, for their brothers and sisters, so that they can earn a blessing with that act in this holy month of blessing.
Mohammed El Jallo is asking on Facebook, he says, thank you very much to AYV for having the Sheikh in the studio. I have a few questions. One, can swallowing one's own spit spoil someone's fast? 2, is it allowed to watch movies like Nollywood or Hollywood movies during fasting?
Well, I mean, Muhammad, the last question, discretion is very, very important. As I'm saying, you can't be watching porns during Ramadan, naked, you know, for opposite sex. You can't be doing that. I believe you are Muhammad, you are a Muslim, you now understand the don'ts and do's of Ramadan. So just use your discretion for the film or whatever you can be watching. Of course, for the first question, he said what?
Swallowing your spit, does it hinder your fasting? The
intentional, as I'm saying, Islam is very, very concerned with doing things intentionally. And there are also scholars advise that the one that's inside your throat, no problem. But the one that you try to gather, because some people can try to make it so plenty in their mouth to substitute, you know, for that to represent water. And when you do it deliberately, you can go in conflict with the rules of fasting, and you can have problem with Allah.
All right, thank you very much. We have run out of time. That's as much as we can take. Thank you for your time to be with us this morning and talk about the holy month of Ramadan.